One is my screen being shared? Because I'm just seeing a big green sky again.
Yeah, I'll share it in a second. No worries. Welcome everyone to another Sky Community Call. Today is August 27th of 2025, and as always, we have Rajiv first doing accessibility and ecosystem engagement analysis, and also the future interim host of these calls. And then we'll have a Rune that will keep answering questions about the Sky Agent framework overhaul and the ecosystem entities grant. So yeah, prepare your questions. I know that last time we ran out of time, but hopefully we can cover more this time. And if we need, we can keep going through in different calls. But yeah, thanks everyone for joining. And now, without any further ado, I'm going to have Rajiv join the call for the analysis. Thanks, Rajiv.
Okay. I know there's a lot to go through today, so I'm going to jump straight in, starting as we always do with the wider market landscape. Over the last week, you can see the ongoing momentum. It's been driven especially by the RV offerings for AETH USDT and AETH USDC, much as we've seen all year. If you look at the actual yield environment, you can see that there's this, especially in this risk on market, this premium between the SSR and what we're seeing from the likes of a syrup USDC or an SUSDE. In spite of that, or even with that, we've seen inflows into USDS, and we sort of touched on this a little last week. It just feels like the sweet spot for SUSDS is really these large, more institutional type holders who really value the immediate liquidity, especially with the market depth that they can get at Sky in the billions of dollars. So for Sky overall and for USDS overall, it's been a flat supply week. We saw that uptick in Sky savings, and that's been offset by a downtick in Sky token rewards, both very slight, but it sort of ends the week flat. These two features, Sky savings and Sky token rewards, now the core features of Sky, you can see they're sort of driving 90% of the demand, and that's the prime demand driver for USDS. What's been driving that uptick for SUSDS, if I dig in, again, it's small absolute numbers this week, but just to sort of see it on a trend basis, Maple, Sky strategy, where they allocate their idle yield, we've always seen volatility there, but this has been an up week. We've seen a new entrant, the Sky Frontier Foundation, that I'm sure we'll hear much more about later, who looks like they've allocated funds in. And we're also seeing traction with the new L2s, so specifically Optimism and Unichain. And that, of course, is driven by the Spark SUSDC offering. Perhaps, again, a great example of a savings vault being built on top of the Sky core feature of the SSR. But that is definitely starting to get traction. So with Sky token rewards, where we saw a slight downtick, that downtick is really coming from this other category, which is that long tail of smaller holders. But offsetting that, you see some really big names in the crypto industry increasing positions. So crypto funds, these are the big holders that we're able to put a name to. Galaxy Digital, being a prime example. And it's sort of, like it plays to that theme of these big institutional whales, institutional holders who really find the sweet spot with the proposition. So that's it for USDS, a relatively flat week. But one thing I did want to call out as well, obviously Sky ecosystem is far bigger than just USDS. DAI is something we've not looked at in a while, but over the last few weeks, there's been a very interesting trend of an uptick in DAI demand as shown in the supply. And you sort of see it more clearly if I zoom out to a year. Hang on, I realize I'm not sharing the right screen. So we don't actually build detailed analytics for this yet. So I've switched into info.sky.money. But you can see how over the last few weeks, we're seeing this uptick in DAI. We're digging in to understand exactly what's driving that. DAI on Polygon is definitely one of the drivers, but not the only one. It doesn't account for this uptick we're seeing. So hopefully next week we can bring you some more insight there. And I call it out because, of course, DAI demand is highly profitable for the ecosystem. So I'll switch back to the analytics dashboard that we have out. And I guess the last call out is something we touched on last week as we sort of just look in more detail at some of the structurally important players in the market. We are building out more analytics, starting with Aave. There's a lot more to be done here, but we sort of started with just the gross debt in those markets as we try to understand where the drivers are across the competitive landscape. And it's sort of been great just to see how exciting these times are for the stablecoin landscape. I mean, reading about large TradFi players, likes of JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, all sort of now reporting on and calling out the size of the opportunity is great to see. So I'm sure we're going to see a very dynamic environment. From our side, we'll be trying to track and bring as much value add analytics from the landscape as we can. I'll end there and I'll hand back for the important part of the call.
Nice. Thanks a lot for that, Rajiv. I think Rune was having some connectivity issues, but we'll see. We'll see. There's actually a question. I don't know if you'll be able to answer it. It's about the Steakhouse report. It says what causes the difference between the official Sky earnings, 200 million per year numbers versus the Steakhouse number 8 million for the second quarter profit. I don't know if you got the time to dive into that. Or...
Yeah, I think we'd really need the Steakhouse team to comment on that. I mean, I think I saw some commentary in terms of just what's reported on info.sky and Steakhouse. I think they sort of have a different lens, where Steakhouse is more focused on actuals and info.sky looks at, it sort of projects profits based on the past trend. So it's not an equal apples for apples comparison.
Yeah, it is a good question to highlight. So maybe you can post it in the forum. I'm sure the guys that created the report might be able to answer you. All right. So I don't know if Rune is still having issues. I haven't seen any questions yet. So if you guys have any questions, you can start posting it. Actually, we have an answer by Mark from Steakhouse. I'm assuming the question is referring to info.sky run rate, which is forward looking, whereas the Steakhouse report is backwards looking. So that's a good point. Highlight hopefully that that answers your question. Thank you, Mark, for the answer. All right. I don't know if you have any elevator music ready, Rajiv, for this type of situations. So Mark is adding that Q2 profits were 15.9 million, 36.5 million excluding the one-time Spark transfer. I don't know, Mark, if you want to come on the microphone. I don't want to call you out, or if that's it, we can also show it on screen. Let me know if you want to hop on the mic.
I'm actually ready now.
Nice.
After getting all set up, ready to go.
All right.
But yeah, like this, someone on the Discord, because I was also wondering this question, right? Someone on the Discord talked about how maybe they didn't count staking rewards and burn, but I don't know if that's the case.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's what Highlight is asking actually. Does the stakehouse report also take into account buyback and staking rewards? That could be the difference.
But the reality is, let's see what they answer. But like the reality is that I think that that we also have so we basically have three ways of looking at the financials, right? There's the stakeholder reports, there is the info dashboard, and then there is also the capital transparency reports, which were all about looking at the expenses. And I think I would imagine that if you want to figure out expenses, the easiest way is to like that's the capital transparency reports are like the most detailed way to look at them, but they like account for them in some particular way. And then what I just want to say, I'll shut up and then Mark can give his answer. But what I want to say is like I think the one thing that's pretty important is that I think the revenue generally checks out. Like if you take 8 billion times 6% or so, like the sort of the average return that we're seeing, then I think the revenue pretty much makes sense given that there's quite a low savings rate. Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Hey guys, hopefully you can hear me okay. But I just wrote in the chat, we are including, when we pay out Sky rewards, that is included in the operating earnings. But when we're, paying out the Sky staking rewards in USDS, those are not included in operating earnings. And generally, when we, are doing these on-chain financials, we're trying to be as conservative as possible. Which I think is a huge difference compared to a lot of projects in the space, which are basically trying to inflate all their earnings. And, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of positive takeaways from the report as well, specifically around gross margins and net margins, which were both up significantly year over year. And obviously, there's some people on Twitter that have an axe to grind against Sky for various reasons. But some of my takeaways from the report are, compared to this time last year, Q2 supply is up 52%. Our gross margin is up from 50% to 73%. And if you back out the one-time Spark surplus buffer transfer, the net margins are up from 31% to 44%. So those are all very healthy economic indicators for the project.
So what I really have to say, and I mean, what I think is so important is that even if we, let's say we I mean, I was just talking about, we have three different ways of measuring this stuff. That none of the three tend to agree, right? It's all sort of slightly different because of all these like quirks and differences in how you do it. And just basically, this also comes back to the thing that is like a very common topic, right? Which is why is there not more transparency? Why is there not more? Why isn't everything being explained and detailed? And the answer is it's just a huge amount of work. So even like something like getting these three reports to like all completely agree, it just takes a kind of coordination work that would then take the time away from all the real jobs, basically, the people doing this stuff. Like Steakhouse, for instance, they're running Grove, right? So they're also like doing actual growth and like business. And this is why the most important thing is that we're simply going to just like remove the need to worry about all this stuff through the core simplification, which now already actually like the really, really critical step has been achieved, right? Of funding the ecosystem foundations, which takes the vast majority of like the really nebulous, really hard to sort of grok spending out of the system. And you can already see the improvement on info.sky.money now because because the launch project was sort of pre-funded some months back. And then now that the foundation has been set up, info.sky.money is now configured to display basically taking the last 3 months of expenses and not counting capital expenses, not counting capital transactions, right? So not counting the huge transaction that sets up the ecosystem foundations. And then looking at revenue, and that then gives you this sort of forward estimate or like prediction of like what's the kind of like day to day, what's the income you can expect, and what is that? I mean, and then the number you get, the 300 million in profits or so, that's the number you get if you analyze that. And of course, I mean, those profits are going to change for all sorts of reasons, but they're actually going to be much more predictable now. Like that number is going to be a lot more steady than it's ever been before, because in the past you would have these transfers again and again in sort of random sizes that now will all be sort of compartmentalized away inside the Frontier Foundation and inside the various stars. And then crucially, when the stars are created, that's what we consider a capital transaction, right? So that's not counted. And obviously that's like, it sounds like a bad thing that, oh, so you send millions into a star and then you just don't count it, and then that should be a good thing. But the reality is, like, if you counted capital transactions, profits would now be just completely off the charts, because then you would also have to count the inflow of SPK tokens to the treasury, right? Which is like, I don't know, I think the current value is like 400 million or something. So by not counting the capital transactions, we are actually lowering profits. And instead, the way we count the value of SPK tokens is only when they end up generating actual, like they generate actual cash inflow through their farming, like so the farming value that they provide to that the USDS inflows for people who farm, which then helps the protocol generate the base rate without having to pay savings rate. And there's actually another, currently, I just realized this just a second, like there's another source of profits in the system that is actually not counted anywhere, and that's actually the value of the SPK being distributed to Sky stakers. So that should actually also be counted, and that's going to make the profit number even higher. That's kind of crazy. But yeah, so what I'm really looking forward to on the financial side is Q4 next year, because Q4 this year is going to be the first quarter where there will be just so much less complexity in inflows and outflows to the protocol, right? Where it will just be very consistent. So then when you're comparing Q4 2026 to Q4 2025, it's going to be like much more, like there's going to be so much less noise and none of this like bootstrapping launch, kind of setting things up and getting things in motion. There's none of that. There's just the question of did it grow, did it generate more profits or not? And it should be quite transparent because the expenses will be so slimmed down.
Nice.
All right. Yeah, so actually, look, I'll take a look at the questions, and then, because I had a sort of a little intro that I prepared, kind of like something I wanted to talk about in a broader context, but I'll see if it's more relevant to dive right into the questions or not. Let me just have a look. Yeah, okay, perfect. All right, so I'll read out loud the first question, right? So and you can pin it one. So today, stablecoins seem to fall into two broad categories: transactional stablecoins like USDC and USDT, which are primarily used for payments and transfers, and yield-focused stablecoins like USDS or USDE, which are mainly designed to capture DeFi yield. Given this distinction, it's hard to imagine USDS becoming a widely used medium of exchange. Would you agree with that perspective? If so, how do you see the future of USDS evolving, and what could be the main catalysts driving broader adoption and ownership of USDS? Yeah, so I mean, this is really cool. This is like I've called this the $1 trillion question many times in the past on like podcasts and so on. Funny enough, actually a lot with Athena, which did actually manage to find a really good answer to the $1 trillion question, right? But so the $1 trillion question is how do you get get a stablecoin adopted? Like, how do you get more demand for a stablecoin? Because it's like the perfect product, crazy profitable if you can get it growing. But how do you? It's just so hard to figure out what's going to make people actually use a stablecoin. So the vision that Sky has been sort of, I mean, Sky launched with you know, a vision going in this direction that has then, I think it's been transformed a little bit with the like the modifications to the Sky Agent framework that happened over this first launch year, when like after revealing all the concepts and sort of revealing the new brand and actually rolling out the system, there was, you know, a lot of knowledge was obtained from that, and now the vision and the sort of the like the bet in terms of how to make the project successful is sort of slightly shifted, but still essentially the same fundamental concept. And so basically, Sky is evolving from just offering a stablecoin to also, in synergy with offering a stablecoin, offering the more general value of supporting capital formation. Right. So capital formation is this concept of basically, it's like what happens when you have sort of, I mean, even something like when a startup is created, it's like investors come together and then there's a team and there's an idea and then you get capital formation, right? And the perfect example of capital formation and most importantly, why capital formation basically is just the absolutely most valuable thing you can possibly do, like with finance and maybe anything. Because arguably, like finance is one of the, I mean, even though it doesn't do anything real, but at the same time, in terms of like value as measured in money, basically, it might be the most sort of value creating industry you can possibly imagine. And that's despite being hilariously inefficient, as we all know, which is why we're here, right? But the perfect example of this is the story of Spark, right? Where you basically have capital formation you have capital formation synergizing with and underpinned by a stable coin, right? Which is actually in a sort of capital stack. You can think of a stable coin as a super senior, as like super senior capital, basically. Meaning like that lowest possible risk in the whole system, right? That's USDS. Like everything else in the system will blow up before USDS blows up, right? But with the introduction of the Sky Agent framework, Sky basically also starts to introduce and sort of to develop on the concepts of different layers of the capital stack. So Spark is like the first example of capital formation happening where you take junior risk capital, right? So you take capital that is very willing to take risk, and then you basically kind of combine that with the super senior capital from USDS itself. And then, I mean, you have to, these are sort of different ingredients. Like you also have to add like the Sky primitives, like the technical capabilities to sort of how Spark interacts with USDS. And you also have to like add the risk management of Sky, and then also just the kind of stability and governance security of the whole framework. But then you sort of take, and then you, of course, most importantly, you need the team, right? You need the amazing Spark team. But you take all these things together, and then basically what capital formation does is it turns what is ultimately like, I mean, it's a 25 million capital transaction, right? Of Sky injecting 25 million into Spark. Plus, I mean, admittedly, right, there's also a bunch of, like, it's not just 25 million. There was a lot of work prior to that. So also a bunch of tech. But I mean, if you took each of the pieces individually, you know, it's still, you know, I mean, saying that it's 25 million of capital being injected is not completely wrong. And especially in terms of expenses, I mean, it's not a different order of magnitude than a 25 million capital transaction from the perspective of Sky. But basically, Sky put in 25 million and got out. Well, let me just check the exact number right now. 390 million, right? So that's capital formation. Like you take sort of different types of capital, and you take the team, and you take the business. You take the business opportunity, you take the risk management, you take the governance, security, and stability, and it sort of becomes greater than the sum of its parts, right? And that's kind of what Sky is now offering in like a very generalized fashion And then to lean back to sort of driving back to sort of why, like how is this going to drive adoption of USDS? Well, so the answer is basically that if you can do superior capital formation that taps into USDS, you can sort of get these value creating engines up and running, right? Where you can get more value out of the capital, you can get more value out, like you can get more value out of the risk capital that's willing to take risk. You can get more value out of the teams that are willing to build stuff. Then you can also get more value out of the super senior position. So basically, as we get more and more stars, and as we get better and better at sort of combining different types of capital teams and basically the tools of Sky, that should just result in a better risk-adjusted return on USDS, which is kind of the I mean, sort of financially, that's like the holy grail, right? If you can get a better risk-adjusted return for something that's super senior, then you just get the best place for like rational actors, also known as mercenary capital, to sort of park its idle capital. Now the thing is, this is still, I mean, Spark is the only star that's like live and proven completely, including having its token out. Grove is the second one, so that's proof that it's possible to launch multiple of these and manage them in parallel. It's still going to take a long time to really get many of them going and also prove that it's possible to risk manage all of them at the same time. But basically, it's like creating this general engine of value creation through capital formation, including the stablecoin, the super senior aspect of it, but also kind of the other layers of it. That's what's actually going to drive the growth in aggregate, right? So Sky will grow as like an entire economy, rather than a sort of a kind of a more like, so it's more, I guess you could say, it's maybe more vertically integrated growth that I would expect to see versus sort of horizontal integration where you have sort of USDS ending up as a stablecoin everywhere for some particular specific niche. Well, if it's going to be anything, it should be then mercenary capital, right? So yeah, so that's really, I mean, that's kind of that's the fundamental sort of vision and direction of the project, and in the sort of direction it's going on now, right? By simplifying the core, sort of removing all the distractions away from what the really basic building blocks that exist in Sky that allows stars like Spark, Grove, and all of the other many Genesis agents. So there's a lot more coming that they can tap into. And then I guess I could also offer that, also add to that not only are there, so one thing is like more capital formation, meaning more stars coming, but also there's going to be more products, so kind of more technical capabilities to basically do more advanced capital formation of like different types of capital. And by opening up for that, you just kind of increase the kind of opportunity for getting very effective capital formation with very good results. Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, that was kind of my intro thing. I think I really want to talk a lot about capital formation going forward for sort of the advanced audience, because I also think that this is such an effective way to bridge the sort of the unique advantages that our ecosystem has over to TradFi and institutions. And I think what we are increasingly seeing is like that's the PMF for Sky, right? It's really the institutions, like TradFi, and then like giga crypto whales that, I don't know, got super rich and then they became more conservative. They are, in my experience, they seem to be the types of users that are that sort of are resonating with what Sky has to offer. All right, let me go through some more questions. Let me just see if there's anything specific to this. All right. So what are some next projects for SFF that weren't possible before this entity was founded? Is there a plan for debts for Sky Token? So actually, I mean, I also wrote this in Discord. Like, the main thing, like the main concern actually of founding the entities is, like, one thing is the simplification of the project, right? So that now, like, and I sort of tongue-in-cheek describe it as, if you're sort of a pumper, when moon type of person, then the best way to think of the gigantic expense, like basically the gigantic capital transaction to set up the foundation, is just a bunch of lost money. Like, just, it's not going to result in some kind of quick product or some new product, like, new quick, I don't know, tech or something that's gonna make the price moon. Like, obviously there's a bunch of tech coming, but all the tech was already on the way. Like things like staked USDS is something that's on the horizon, right? That could be pretty exciting for the project, but it's not like the SSF directly enables that. It's more that it simplifies the core, so that makes it a lot easier to scale up the stars and sort of have less confusion around. Now there's also a bunch of stars and there's a core, and that also is doing stuff. So keeping the core really simple makes a much better environment for reliable, dependable capital formation in stars. And then the other thing is like legal protection and like structuring and formalization of core contributors to the project. Basically, one of the big advantages that Sky has always had is that this project, despite having some of the craziest roots and some of the craziest early culture you can possibly imagine, has now completely transformed to a point where it's quite capable of onboarding and integrating complete no coiners, non-crypto people, and sort of training them into being crypto native slowly, while they'll be sort of subject matter experts in something else, and then can actually be sort of softly onboarded into the crypto world. But that does, I mean, of all the things that are just the worst thing that to sort of expose super genius contributors to is obviously like anything where like legal risk, legal uncertainty, just like nobody wants that to be messing with their livelihood, right? Unless you're like a true crazy person, right? Which of course some of us are. Some of the like the early and long time contributors to Sky, I don't know, would just have the wrong priorities, I guess you could say. But we got through it, and now everything is very stable and very formal and very like there's extremely like solid ground under the project now. But then setting up the foundations is just another step towards just even more really making sure that people who are doing extremely important development of like future tech and trying to set up the project for extreme scalability, they should just not be worried about other stuff, right? They should be laser focused on their critical work. And then there's even the fact that this is the first time that I'm sort of formally involved in the project, in like a sort of formal capacity for many, many years, right? So I've just been like a random guy, which is not exactly also a very risky way for me to interact with Sky, right? As I've been doing it for the last many years. So it's just like that's really the lens to view it at. That it's a de-risking thing. It's not some kind of like now we can do some secret tech and that's gonna pump the price. But again, like I said, if you go to info.sky.money, you can see some pretty crazy profits, and I think for the most part they actually hold up, and as they get sort of more and more verified, which will be a lot easier post foundation funding. Basically we'll have more dependable, like more reliable, more easy to predict profits, and they just are extremely high, right? So that's definitely a really good thing. Okay. Could we get an update on number of new Star Token launches by end of year, please? I think a couple of months back, the estimate was about 3 to 4 Star Token launches. Did this change somehow? Yeah, I actually have no idea how to. I don't know how to estimate. I don't know if there will even be a single one. I definitely hope so. I think it's a great time to launch tokens. But it's like, as with everything else, it's all about like, when you're very early in a project, it's all kind of everyone's ready to take all sorts of risks. Then when you actually build up something real, and now you got something real, got something serious, suddenly people going to become a lot more concerned with managing risk. It is kind of, I mean, it is very, very important for Sky also that the stars, they rapidly launch their tokens. So it's not a good thing to have stars that don't run governance with their own tokens. But like, it's just like what Sky's putting together right now, across like just a massive multi-billion protocol, and just creating these just completely never seen before types of financial primitives, and then sort of putting it all together in a very novel type of organizational structure, sort of I don't know what to call it, like emergent coordination environment. It's a huge, like, it's really a lot. So it's very important that the teams can take the time they need to do it right, because the worst thing that could happen is that like the ecosystem tries to move too fast, and then you have some kind of failure of some kind, right? Some kind of embarrassing failure, or maybe even a dangerous failure, right? Where I don't know, a star could somehow mess up its launch and wipe out all its risk capital or something, and then become a total dud, right? Which would be a really major loss of potential value to the ecosystem. Like, if the plans that are currently being incubated and carried out, if they are executed methodically and carefully, and they all sort of reach just like, let's say, half of their potential, right? Or maybe on average half of their potential, then the level of like the fuel and the environment for runaway growth is absolutely going to be there. Like, then we can sort of get to the holy grail of what Sky's trying to achieve, right? Which is this completely permissionless, frictionless capital formation that will one day be possible when the Sky Agent framework is really, 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 really scalable. Okay, can you say something about upcoming stars? What type of projects they are, when you release them, how many there will be till the end of the year? Okay, well, I can say that there is some really, to me at least, I think really exciting, really cool news coming quite soon. Yeah, then I don't know how to say quite soon. Well, yeah. Anyway, you'll have to figure out what the quite soon means. But like, so far we have Spark, which is like sort of tried and true DeFi. Then we have Grove, which is also very much tried and true RWA, like two very sort of fundamental cornerstones of the business that Sky has always been really solid at. And what's coming next is, for the first time, something that uses the Sky Agent framework to try to do something that Sky has in the past not been so great at, or maybe not. It hasn't been so great at it. It's more like it's just has not at all had the like the capability to really heavily focus on this. And then using the star model, it allows, it really it may showcase that you can really get the ecosystem to accomplish things that it simply couldn't do in the past. Okay, with the new stars, with so many of them, can you talk about how that will be handled by Sky stakers? Currently, we have to pick between SPK or USDS. We would like to see a way to get both without having to pay gas fees and using a different wallet. That is a huge pain. Yeah. I mean, so one day, I don't know. I think realistically, this might be 2 years out or something. There will be a sort of major update to how the staking works, and it will reach something much closer to its final form. And definitely one of the things that's essential is like an unstaking period, right? So actually there will be a real skin in the game when you stake. It's not just free money. It's like you make a conscious choice, because if you stake, you can't easily just unstake and get your Sky liquid again. So it's more similar to the way ETH staking works. But on top of that, there's actually also going to be mechanisms preventing LSTs, like liquid staking tokens. So actually, like right now, there's the Yearn vault, right? You can deposit into Yearn. You can sort of compound your Sky through staking. That will be disabled, and it will not be possible for Yearn or others to build those types of systems once this big staking upgrade comes. And then the other thing that should also be a part of that is like support for these like helper functions. So stuff like I want to farm multiple different tokens at the same time, or maybe I mean, a really obvious one that I think is that I'm very excited to see is that you can automatically buy more Sky, right? So that instead of the system kind of leaking out capital into USDS, which of course, I mean, actually it's not leaking out because the capital is staying in USDS, but it's transforming it into sort of a much lower risk state. But it keeps the kind of risk level of the. Well, I guess actually it's more like it's more like right now we take low risk, like we take profits that are already in a they're already sort of capital in a low risk state, and then they're just handed out in a low risk state. But if you allow stakers to automatically transform their USDS staking rewards into Sky and then receive Sky, you can just get it can sort of light a fire under the whole ecosystem, right? Because the economics just start to sort of be much more sort of self-growing. Yeah, I mean, I would definitely use that right now. I think it's a very compelling way to use Sky staking right now, is to just get your staking rewards and use it to buy more Sky, and then stake the Sky and so on, right? Any idea why Grove has delayed releasing a token? Will the other stars be much quicker with releasing a token? Also off topic, but will Spark be releasing perpetuals? I can't really answer any of these questions. Like I said before, like I don't like. Basically, right now there are a lot of much more pressing concerns than launching tokens in the short run. Yeah, I actually don't have like, and in any case, of course, it should have like anything related to Grove or Spark should be like that'll be communicated by them. Because for real, it's like they're very segregated teams at this point. Although, of course, I mean they're very veteran, senior, like teams that has been spun out of Sky over a very, very long period of time, right? So they're definitely like highly trusted, but it's just the reality is they are now set up with sort of different incentives. And one thing's for sure, like the ones who benefit the most when Grove launches their token is the Grove team. There can be no doubt that like that is 100% their incentive, not just because, I mean, it's their freaking tokens, right? It's their upside, but also because there's this massive penalty applied to any star that is doing operations but does not have a token release yet, where Sky basically just takes 30% of all their net revenue. So Grove will not be generating 30% of Grove's net revenue will go to Sky until it launches a token. So you can be sure that the team is very much aligned with Sky holders in wanting to get the token out ASAP. It's just, again, like everything else, it's all about doing it right. One key aspect of capital formation is access to RWAs, such as the upcoming release of tokenized equities from the likes of Robinhood and others. Do you see agents like Grove accessing this capital type early on to get a flywheel strategy that will lead to more institutional interest in minting and accessing USDS? I have no idea, but this is just what's so freaking important about stars, and like why just like Sky, I mean, from my perspective, it's just operating at such a totally different level than it's ever done before, right? And so it is that the reality is I have no clue like if this is a good business model or not. Like when I read this, like it's impossible for me to say, is this a good idea or not? Like, is this gonna make money or not? Right. And in the past, it was like me and people like me had to sort of sit in the core of the entire maker DAO, right? And sort of discuss and politic around, okay, what should be like, what's the thing that's like the next incremental thing that's going to grow the ecosystem, and then like if it happened and it turned out to be a dud, which it actually did all the time, right? So Maker just did endlessly onboarded endless collaterals that were useless for years, right? And it was actually it was like a big part of it was my fault because I was like, well, we need more collaterals, so let's onboard some collaterals, right? And everyone else is like, yeah, well, that seems to be sounds good. And the problem was that when all of that work like didn't result in anything meaningful, nobody could really feel that it like the feedback of like, well, we're doing a bunch of useless work, nothing's being achieved by this, because the sort of core business of Maker at the time was making so much money and was scaling so big that like there was just this like it was not like the MKR token was tanking or anything. It was just stagnating, but it didn't matter. I was still making lots of money. It was like still big and so on. So with let's say Grove in this example, right? I mean, they will look at ideas and potential business models like that, and they will like have this extreme laser focus on like we need to make the exact decision that's gonna like one, it's gonna kind of propel us forward so we can compete with others that we know are also doing everything they possibly can to like get like momentum and exponentially grow and compete. And two, if we make like one really really bad decision, we could get fully wiped out, right? It could be like game over and all our hopes and dreams would be over, right? Just one really bad decision and that might be enough to to wipe out a star depending on its size, right? Now a Grove is a big star, like it wouldn't get wiped out by one bad decision, but more importantly, Steakhouse is like a very it's just a veteran team, so they're never gonna they would never drop the ball like that. But I mean, that's Grove. That's a team that's like a very veteran team inside Sky, right? What's so cool is you can take people that are not necessarily super veterans, that you can be less sure about how great are they going to be, and you can sort of scale them up or down with how much risk capital do they get, right? How much junior risk capital do they get? This is sort of the capital formation, right? You have to kind of align the junior risk capital to the sort of the trust you have in the team. So give the wrong team the wrong type of capital and it's going to cause a lot of pain, right? Like give a total newcomer noob 100 million in junior risk capital and it's going to be a disaster, right? But give them 1 million in junior risk capital. I mean, that's a lot of money still. They gotta be not a total noob, right? Still like trusted people, but maybe someone is just like they have a reputation more broadly, but they're not necessarily that sort of they don't have that much sort of Lindy effect inside, let's say Sky, right? That's the situation where okay, you can give them some smaller pieces of junior risk capital, and then that that ability to do this sort of very nimble, very flexible capital formation to sort of set the right teams up with the right tools and the right capital and the right framework, that just allows all of these decisions to be made. Like everyone will be like laser when they make the decision. It's like life or death, right? Like the thing I should be doing now has to be what truly using 100% of my brain power. I believe this is the one move that's going to generate the most value for me. That's the most important thing. Everybody will be thinking about their own value, but then also that's going to return the most value to the whole ecosystem. And so with the really just super high quality capacity for capital formation in Sky, there will just be so many good decisions being made, right, on doing the right business moves. Yeah, super long answer to that, but that's I think it's just that was one of the questions I had for years of like, how the hell do we deal with, should we do this Robinhood thing? Sounds good, but how the hell do I know, right? Okay. SPK seems like a worthless farm token. Any idea how to improve that for the upcoming stars? What's funny is I mean, Spark, I believe right now it has like, I think it has upwards of 50 million in profits right now. So it's like it's like one of the most profitable tokens in the space, I think. I don't. It's a while back I saw like the dashboard, and but so I think that what needs to happen with Spark is just like with Sky, it needs to get more clear how to report like profits, results, traction, all this stuff. And a huge barrier to that is that Sky itself is still in the like last stages of fully activating the like just a bunch of different key pieces of the Sky Agent framework, so that they sort of move from their kind of interim training wheel stage to a much more like, now they're actually running. I kind of call it like, it's running more like a product than as a like it's like it's changing from like an internal tool to an external product, if that makes sense. And that one of the things, you know, when you go from internal tool to external product, one of the huge things that impacts is things like precision of like the numbers, precision of like the sort of standardization. So right now, like, yeah, Spark has something like 50 million profits, but how exactly you determine that depends on exactly how you split the P&L between Sky and Spark, and how you calculate all these different things. And that needs to be like completely, totally figured out, and then like sort of settled. And only then can you start to make truthful statements around the exact profits. Can the two foundations have annual or semi-annual meetings so that we can meet the team / ask questions? So the Frontier Foundation will be, I mean, obviously I'm going to do these community calls as often as I can every week for probably for a long time. And that would definitely also include bringing on other people from the Frontier Foundation, which is the foundation that's all about, it's the acceleration, it's the technical growth of ecosystem. It's also, in some sense, you could say the Frontier Foundation is the foundation where like it's all the, I mean, okay, it is extremely critical work, but it is, of all the work happening, it is the work that is more nice to have than need to have. Like, I mean, it all has to be done, and it's extremely critical, but it's like the Frontier Foundation contains the activities where if it was wiped out for some reason, Sky wouldn't just be completely destroyed and wiped out if that happened. While the Fortification Foundation is different. That's actually containing stuff that is like much more, like, now we're talking, I mean, it's not like, this doesn't mean if the Fortification Foundation gets wiped out, like Sky gets wiped out or something like that. But the Fortification Foundation is stuff that is like need to have for the security of Sky itself, and it's sort of a critical piece of what do you call that, like this sort of defense in depth mechanism that's especially designed for like most importantly protecting collateral in the system, right? Protecting USDS, but then also protecting people, so that you don't have like individuals getting sort of harmed just for contributing to a decentralized project in good faith. So yeah, I mean, the answer is because of the, well, okay, now I just went through these two entities. I'll just explain. There's one more crucial sort of concept that can be thought of as well in this context, and that's the core council. And I mean, we don't have time to get into that on this call today, but that's going to be a major topic of like calls going forward, because the core council is like that's the most essential part of the ecosystem that Skyholders actually has to be involved with and sort of really understand. So that's going to be like a major focus and major topic of like the community calls, sort of increasingly over time, right? As things normalize and standardize and so on. But yes, the Frontier Foundation will also, when it makes sense and sort of at opportune times, we'll have people talking about cool growth, cool development, and also to the extent possible. I don't know if there's something that's going to end up making this harder than I expect, but one thing I'm hoping is that there can be a lot more transparency of the code bases, right? So that there can be more sort of like, oh, here's something that's like in the middle of being built, but it's kind of like it's like a boring TradFi type of thing, or like sort of deep, like high finance thing that you don't really need to do sort of a marketing push or brand reveal or something for. And as a result, you may as well just like start showing the code when it's still in the middle of being built and so on. I think that would be really cool for the Frontier Foundation to be able to do that. Are we still planning on authorized front ends with incentives? Any estimated timeline on when that program launches? So there's already something called Accessibility Reward Live, and it's already paying out lots of different front ends. Yeah, maybe there's somebody from Cambria or something that can like just name some of those.
Yeah, we could prepare something. We could prepare something for some other call. That's potentially an interesting. Maybe we can set up something with Rajiv as well. But yeah, that would be an interesting thing for a call. But yeah, long story short is like if anyone integrates through a prime agent / star something to increase the USDS in the market, then they get a reward for doing that. It's a little bit like a marketing fee kind of. So that's, yeah, we can do a special session on it. I think it will be interesting.
Yeah, but what are can you just name some of the front ends that are getting paid right now?
Yeah, I mean CowSwap. I think it's the example that comes to mind. I think you have a DeFi Saver. There's a bunch out there.
Oasis, not Oasis.
Yes.
Summerfi.
Summerfi, yes.
Yeah, this example of Summerfi is pretty cool because that's a team and project that was originally, I don't know how long, just many years ago, spun out of Maker, and it was sort of completely separated out of Maker, had absolutely no sort of formal connection to Maker, right? But still built a lot of critical stuff, really supported Maker, and really provided really crucial support during the transformation and the launch of Sky. And now with this, with the accessibility reward Sky Primitive, now they're actually getting paid a bit, right? For at least some of the value that this project delivers. I think it would be cool to find more ways to incentivize and sort of share, help people that work and integrate, find ways to autonomously share value with them, right? So you incentivize them to just do even more work and create even more value.
Yeah, that's just some of the payouts that we've seen in the past. You can see CowSwap, DeFi Saver, Summerfi, Paraswap, Yarn, Lazy Summer, and some of them are associated to the Prime Agent Spark. Yeah, just wanted to quickly share that. We can do a special session at some other point. We're right at the top of the hour, Rune. I don't know. There's a lot of interesting questions. Maybe we can save them for next time.
I'll just quickly answer these two last questions, right? So any significant governance changes? Basically, I was mentioning this before, is the core council. So that is not going to really, it's going to take a while before the core council starts to be chosen through governance, because at first there's just only going to be the executor related to Atlas Access that will be the one that have the single core council seat, but later it'll be like a sort of election process, and that'll be the main governance activity. So I guess no like sweeping changes coming. I think again, the core council is the primary way that governance is supposed to function long run. So we'll kind of have to see how that plays out, obviously. But the delegation system itself, for instance, is I think it's like in a pretty good shape. Now there's going to be a lot about how to do payouts to delegates and that kind of stuff. That's gonna need to be fine-tuned. And then auto compounding of staking rewards to Sky token. Is this functionality in development, or is it just an idea? No, that's entirely just an idea. It's gonna come way out. that's not that is not going to. I mean, like I said, I think this is not a real time estimate. It's more like just to explain that this would be very far out. But let's say something like 2 years out would be when at that point all of the other so crazy valuable opportunities for all the things that can be built, they may have all been checked off, and then it may be time to make a much more sophisticated pass of the staking system.
I don't know if I'm misunderstanding the question, but I've seen that Yearn has this feature where you stake Sky, and the USDS that you get from that staking is auto compounded by buying more Sky. So it is a bit like that, but maybe I'm misunderstanding the
Yeah,
question.
I mean, you can use it's all right. You can use it right now on your own.
Yeah.
All right.
Right.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, there's a lot of questions today, so that was great. I think I will not make it next week, but yeah, there will be follow up with plans and so on. And like I said, there's going to be this increasing formalization and more sort of grounded in actual governance, slowly happening with the community call. Coming up over the next. I mean, I guess over the rest of this year.
Yeah. As always, if you have any questions, you can get them in forum.sky.money, or otherwise see you next time. Thanks everyone for joining. See you next time.
See you guys.